boyfriend kept accusing me of cheating and started saying he'd k***le me if I ever cheated. So I posted online and everyone said I was in danger, so I had to escape with police help and leave everything behind. My name is Sarah, and 6 months ago I thought I was in love with the perfect man. Today, I'm writing this from a safe house, having left behind everything I owned to escape what everyone told me was a potentially deadly situation. This is the story of how online strangers saved my life when I couldn't see the danger I was in. I met Marcus at a coffee shop downtown where I worked as a freelance graphic designer. He was charming, successful in real estate, and seemed genuinely interested in my work and dreams. Our first few dates were magical. He brought me flowers, remembered details about conversations we'd had, and made me feel like I was the most important person in his world. Marcus was attentive in ways I'd never experienced before. He'd text me good morning every day, call during his lunch breaks just to hear my voice, and plan elaborate weekend dates. After my previous relationship ended badly, his devotion felt like exactly what I needed. Finally, someone who appreciated me and wanted to be with me. We moved in together after 4 months, which felt natural since we were spending every night together anyway. Marcus had a beautiful apartment across town, much nicer than my small studio, so I gave up my lease and moved my things into his place. He was so excited to have me there, helping me arrange my artwork on his walls and clearing out closet space for my clothes. The first sign something was wrong came about a month after I moved in. I was working late on a client project when Marcus came home from a business dinner. He seemed agitated, pacing around the apartment while I tried to focus on my computer. "Who were you texting earlier?" he asked suddenly. I looked up, confused. "When earlier? I've been working for the past 3 hours. Before I left for dinner. I saw you smiling at your phone." I realized he meant when my college friend Jessica had sent me a funny meme. Oh, that was just Jessica. She sent me something silly. Marcus's expression didn't soften. What did she send? The question felt odd, but I showed him the harmless meme about coffee addiction. He looked at it for a long time, then nodded curtly and went to shower. I dismissed it as stress from work. Over the next few weeks, similar incidents became more frequent. Marcus would ask who had called me, why I was smiling, what I was typing when he walked into the room. At first, I thought it was sweet that he was so interested in my day. Then it started feeling intrusive. "Why do you need to know every detail of my conversations?" I asked one evening after he questioned me about a text from my mother. "I just like knowing what's going on in your life. We're partners, right? We should share everything." His explanation made sense, and I felt guilty for being defensive. Maybe this was what healthy communication looked like, and I just wasn't used to it. But the questions escalated. Marcus started asking about my clients. Were any of them men? What did they look like? How long were our meetings? When I mentioned getting coffee with a male client to discuss a logo design, Marcus became visibly upset. "You didn't tell me you were meeting him in person." "It was a work meeting, Marcus. I meet with clients all the time. But you didn't tell me specifically about this one. Why?" I couldn't understand why he was making such a big deal about a routine business meeting. I guess I didn't think it was important enough to mention. Everything is important in a relationship, Sarah. The fact that you're hiding things from me is concerning. The word hiding stung because I genuinely hadn't thought to mention a boring work meeting. But Marcus made it sound like I was being deliberately secretive, which made me question my own behavior. Around this time, Marcus suggested I could work from home more often instead of going to coffee shops or the co-working space I sometimes used. "Wouldn't it be more comfortable here? Plus, we'd save money on your workspace fees." Seemed practical, so I agreed. What I didn't realize was that working from home meant Marcus always knew where I was and what I was doing. When he called during the day, he expected me to answer immediately. If I didn't, he'd want to know why. The accusations started small. Marcus would make comments about how I dressed when I went out to meet clients or friends. "That top is pretty low-cut for a business meeting." Or, "You seem to put a lot of effort into your appearance when you're not seeing me." I started dressing more conservatively, Not because he explicitly asked me to, but because his comments made me self-conscious. I found myself checking the mirror before leaving, wondering if my outfit would spark another uncomfortable conversation. Then Marcus began questioning my friendships. Jessica, my closest friend since college, became a particular target of his suspicion. She's single, right? Doesn't she go to bars and clubs? I bet she encourages you to flirt with guys when you're out together. Jessica isn't like that, and neither am I. We usually just get dinner and catch up. But you admit she's the type who flirts with men for attention. Birds of a feather, Sarah. These conversations left me feeling confused and hurt. Marcus was describing a version of me that didn't exist, but his certainty made me wonder if I was being naive about my own behavior or my friend's influence on me. I started seeing Jessica less frequently, partly because Marcus's comments had planted seeds of doubt about our friendship, and partly because I was tired of the interrogations that followed every time we hung out. The real turning point came 3 months ago when Marcus found a text message thread between me and a male colleague, Ryan, who I'd worked with on several projects. The messages were entirely professional, discussions about deadlines, file sharing, and project details. But there were a lot of them because we'd been collaborating intensively on a complicated branding project. Marcus read through months of messages while I was in the shower. When I came out, he was sitting on the bed with my phone, his face dark with anger. "Want to explain this?" he said, holding up the phone. I looked at the messages, genuinely confused about what had upset him. "Those are work messages with Ryan. We've been working on the Henderson project together." "Really? 'Cause it looks like you two text each other constantly, multiple times a day." "That's not normal for coworkers. We're collaborating on a big project. Of course we communicate frequently." Marcus scrolled through the messages, reading them aloud in a sarcastic tone. "Thanks for staying late to help with the presentation. You're a lifesaver. Couldn't have done this without you. This doesn't sound professional to me." Hearing my own words read back that way, I could see how someone might misinterpret them. But they were just expressions of gratitude for a colleague's help, nothing more. "Marcus, you're reading way too much into polite work messages. Ryan is a coworker, nothing else. A coworker you're obviously attracted to. Otherwise, why would you be so grateful and complimentary?" The accusation was so far from reality that I didn't know how to respond. I tried to explain that expressing appreciation for colleagues was normal professional behavior, but Marcus interpreted my explanations as defensiveness, which he said proved his point. That night, Marcus made me delete Ryan's contact information and promised to only communicate with him through our project management platform, where all messages would be visible to our entire team. It felt like an extreme response, but Marcus said if I had nothing to hide, I shouldn't mind the transparency. Over the next few weeks, the accusations became more frequent and more serious. Marcus would go through my phone regularly, analyzing every interaction for signs of inappropriate behavior. He questioned the tone of my emails, the frequency of my responses, even the timing of when I read messages. "You opened this text at 2:47 p.m. but didn't respond until 3:15. What were you doing for half an hour?" "I was working. I don't respond to every message immediately." "But you respond to some messages immediately. Why did this one get special treatment? Were you crafting the perfect response to impress someone?" These conversations were exhausting and confusing. Marcus would twist innocent interactions into evidence of infidelity, and his logic was so convoluted that I started doubting my own perceptions of reality. The threats began about 6 weeks ago. During one of our arguments about my suspicious behavior, Marcus said something that made my blood run cold. "I love you more than anything, Sarah, but I won't be made a fool of. If I ever found out you were cheating on me, I don't know what I'd do. I might lose control completely." The way he said it, with his jaw clenched and his hands balled into fists, made it clear this wasn't a hypothetical statement. It was a warning. "Marcus, I would never cheat on you. I don't understand why you keep thinking I would. Because you're beautiful and men want you, and sometimes women can't resist the attention. I see how guys look at you when we're out together. I know what they're thinking." His words were possessive rather than complimentary, and they made me feel like an object rather than a partner. But he framed his jealousy as love, saying he couldn't bear the thought of losing me to someone else. The threats escalated from there. Marcus started making comments about what he would do to any man who tried to steal me from him. He talked about violence in casual, almost joking ways that didn't feel like jokes at all. If some guy ever made a move on you, I'd probably end up in jail for what I'd do to him. You know I own a gun, right? Sometimes I think about what I'd do if I caught you with another man. I've never been a violent person, but the thought of you with someone else brings out something dark in me that I can't control. These statements were always followed by declarations of love and promises that he'd never hurt me as long as I stayed faithful. But the implication was clear: if I ever strayed, he couldn't guarantee my safety. I started walking on eggshells, hyper-aware of every interaction I had with other people. I avoided eye contact with men in stores, stopped responding to messages from male clients unless absolutely necessary, and turned down social invitations to avoid giving Marcus reasons to be suspicious. But no matter how careful I was, he always found something to question. If I was quiet, he accused me of hiding something. If I was cheerful, he wondered who I'd been talking to. If I wanted to go out, he suspected I was meeting someone. If I wanted to stay in, he thought I was avoiding him out of guilt. The final straw came 3 weeks ago during what should have been a romantic dinner at home. I had cooked Marcus's favorite meal and bought a bottle of wine to celebrate a big project I'd just completed. We were having a pleasant evening until Marcus noticed I'd been checking my phone occasionally. "Who keeps texting you?" he asked, his tone immediately shifting from relaxed to suspicious. "It's just notifications from my design apps." I turned on alerts for inspiration posts. Marcus held out his hand for my phone. This had become routine. Whenever he suspected something, I had to prove my innocence by showing him exactly what I'd been looking at. But this time I hesitated. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I was tired of being treated like a suspect in my own relationship. The constant surveillance and interrogations were wearing me down, and I wanted one evening where I didn't have to justify every notification or explain every smile. "Can we please just have dinner without going through my phone?" asked gently. Marcus's face changed completely. The loving boyfriend disappeared, replaced by someone I barely recognized. "So now you're refusing to show me your phone. That's all the proof I need. You're definitely hiding something." "I'm not hiding anything. I'm just tired of having to prove my innocence every single day." "Innocent people don't mind proving their innocence, Sarah. The fact that you're suddenly being secretive tells me everything I need to know. What happened next still gives me nightmares." Marcus stood up from the table, his face twisted with rage, and said in a low, threatening voice, "I swear to God, Sarah, if you're cheating on me, I will kill you. And I'll kill him too. I'm not kidding. I will end both of your lives and worry about the consequences later." The way he said it, cold, calculated, like he'd thought about it in detail, terrified me more than anything ever had. This wasn't angry hyperbole. This was a genuine threat from someone who had the means and apparently the will to carry it out. I gave him my phone immediately, hands shaking, while he scrolled through every app, every message, every notification. He found nothing suspicious because there was nothing to find, but instead of apologizing for the threat, he seemed annoyed that his investigation hadn't revealed evidence of wrongdoing. "You're getting better at hiding things," he said finally, handing back my phone. That night, I lay awake next to Marcus, afraid to move or breathe too loudly in case it triggered another accusation. I kept replaying his threat, the look in his eyes when he'd said he would kill me. I realized I was sharing a bed with someone who had explicitly told me he would end my life under certain circumstances. The next day, while Marcus was at work, I did something I probably should have done months earlier. I went online and described my situation in a relationship advice forum. I tried to be objective, explaining Marcus's behavior without editorializing, hoping people would tell me I was overreacting. The response was immediate and unanimous. Every single person who replied told me I was in serious danger and needed to leave immediately. They said Marcus's behavior showed all the warning signs of an abuser who was escalating toward violence. Jealousy and possessiveness aren't love, one person wrote. They're warning signs. And explicit death threats are where you call the police, not Reddit. Your boyfriend has isolated you from friends, monitors your every move, and threatened to kill you. Please call a domestic violence hotline today. I work with domestic violence survivors, and your story terrifies me. Men who make these kinds of threats often follow through. You are not safe. Reading these responses was like having someone turn on a light in a dark room. For months, I'd been so focused on proving my innocence and managing Marcus's emotions that I hadn't stepped back to see the bigger picture. His behavior wasn't about love or concern. It was about control. I spent the rest of that day reading articles about domestic violence, emotional abuse, and relationship red flags. Marcus exhibited almost every warning sign experts listed. Extreme jealousy, isolation from friends and family, monitoring my communications, controlling my movements, and escalating threats of violence. The most chilling thing I learned was that the most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim is when they try to leave. Many of the murders I read about happened when women attempted to end abusive relationships. I realized I couldn't just pack my bags and walk out. Marcus had already threatened to kill me for the hypothetical crime of cheating. What would he do if I actually tried to leave him? I called the domestic violence hotline that several people had recommended. The counselor I spoke with took my situation very seriously, especially when I mentioned the explicit death threats. Sarah, you're absolutely right to be concerned. Threats like that, combined with the controlling behavior you've described, indicate a high risk for lethal violence. We need to help you develop a safety plan. The counselor explained that leaving an abusive relationship required careful planning to minimize the danger. She helped me identify safe times when Marcus wouldn't be home, secure places I could go, and important documents I needed to gather. Over the next week, I secretly prepared for my escape. I opened a new bank account at a different bank and slowly transferred small amounts of money so Marcus wouldn't notice. I made copies of important documents, my passport, birth certificate, social security card, and hid them at work. The hardest part was reaching out to people I'd distanced myself from because of Marcus's jealousy. I called Jessica, my college friend who I'd barely spoken to in months. Sarah, I've been so worried about you. I haven't heard from you in forever, and when I tried to call, you always seemed like you couldn't talk. Hearing her voice made me realize how isolated I'd become. Jessica, I need help. I'm in a bad situation and I need to get out. I gave her a brief explanation of what had been happening, and she immediately offered to help however she could. We arranged for her to be on standby with her car in case I needed to leave quickly. I also contacted my sister in another state, who I'd grown distant from after Marcus complained that she didn't like him. She was shocked to learn what I'd been going through and immediately offered to let me stay with her until I could get back on my feet. The domestic violence counselor recommended involving the police when I was ready to leave, since Marcus had made explicit threats against my life. She helped me understand what to expect and what evidence I should gather. The night before my planned escape, Marcus came home in an unusually good mood. He'd brought takeout from my favorite restaurant and seemed genuinely happy to see me. For a moment, I wondered if I was making a mistake. This was the man I'd fallen in love with. Charming, attentive, loving. But then he started going through my phone again, just as casually as if he was checking the weather. The ease with which he violated my privacy, the assumption that he had the right to monitor my every communication, reminded me why I needed to leave. "You've been quiet today," he said, scrolling through my messages. "Everything okay?" "Just tired from work," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. He said, studying my face carefully. "You sure? You seem different lately." My heart started racing. Had he noticed something? Did he suspect I was planning to leave? "I'm fine, Marcus." "Really?" He stared at me for what felt like an eternity, then nodded and handed back my phone. "Okay. But you know you can tell me anything, right? We don't keep secrets from each other. The irony of him talking about secrets while I was planning my escape wasn't lost on me. But I just smiled and agreed, counting down the hours until I could execute my plan. The next morning, Marcus left for work as usual, kissing me goodbye and telling me he loved me. As soon as his car was out of sight, I called the domestic violence counselor to confirm I was ready to proceed. "Are you sure you have everything you need?" she asked. I looked around the apartment that had been my home for 8 months, at the artwork I'd never see again, the clothes I was leaving behind, the life I was abandoning. I could only take what fit in one small bag without arousing suspicion. "I'm ready," I said. The counselor had arranged for a police officer to escort me while I gathered my essential belongings. Officer Martinez arrived within 20 minutes, and I explained the situation while showing her screenshots of some of Marcus's threatening messages that I'd saved. "You're absolutely doing the right thing," she said. "Based on what you've told me, this situation could escalate very quickly. We'll make sure you get out safely." It took less than 15 minutes to pack everything I could carry. A few changes of clothes, my laptop, important documents, and a small box of sentimental items. Looking around the apartment one last time, I felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. Officer Martinez followed me to the bank where I closed my joint account with Marcus and withdrew my remaining money. Then she escorted me to Jessica's house, where my friend was waiting with her car packed and ready for the drive to my sister's house 3 states away. "We need to leave your phone here," Officer Martinez explained. "If it's on a shared plan or if he has access to your accounts, he could track your location." Leaving my phone felt like cutting my last tie to my old life. But it was necessary for my safety. Jessica and I drove for 12 hours straight, stopping only for gas and food. We didn't talk much during the drive. I was emotionally exhausted, and she seemed to understand that I needed time to process what was happening. When we finally reached my sister's house, I collapsed on her couch and slept for 14 hours straight. When I woke up, there were dozens of missed calls on Jessica's phone from Marcus, who had apparently figured out what had happened. The messages started out confused and hurt. "Sarah, please call me. I don't understand what's happening. Come home and we'll talk about whatever's wrong." But they quickly escalated to angry. "I know you're reading these. Stop being dramatic and come home right now." Then threatening, "You can't just disappear on me. I will find you, and when I do, we're going to have a serious conversation about your behavior." And finally, terrifyingly specific, "I know Jessica helped you. I know where her parents live. I know where your sister works. You can't hide from me forever." Reading those messages confirmed that leaving had been the right decision. The man who claimed to love me was now threatening the people who had helped me escape from him. My sister immediately contacted the local police to report the threats. Because Marcus and I had lived in a different state, the situation was complicated, but the officer we spoke with took it seriously and helped us file the necessary reports. Over the next few days, Marcus tried every method he could think of to contact me. He called my workplace, messaged old friends on social media, even contacted my mother to ask if she'd heard from me. Each attempt showed how determined he was to maintain control over me, even after I'd left. The domestic violence counselor had warned me that leaving might actually increase the danger in the short term, as abusers often escalate their behavior when they realize they're losing control. She recommended that I avoid social media, change my routine completely, and be extra cautious about my surroundings. Living in constant fear was exhausting. Every knock at the door, every unexpected phone call, every car that seemed to follow me too closely made my heart race. I jumped at shadows and had trouble sleeping, always wondering if Marcus had somehow tracked me down. But slowly, with the support of my sister, my friends, and a new therapist who specialized in domestic violence survivors, I began to rebuild my life. I started taking freelance projects again, found a small apartment in my sister's city, and began the long process of healing from months of psychological manipulation. The hardest part was accepting that the man I'd loved had never really existed. The charming, attentive Marcus from our early relationship had been a performance designed to win my trust and affection. The real Marcus was the one who threatened to kill me for imaginary crimes and tried to control every aspect of my life. It's been 3 months since I left, and Marcus has finally stopped trying to contact me directly. But I learned from mutual acquaintances that he's been telling people I abandoned him without explanation, and that I was probably cheating the whole time. Even in my absence, he's still trying to control the narrative and justify his behavior. I'm in a much better place now, but the experience has changed me permanently. I'm more cautious in relationships, more aware of red flags, and more understanding of why victims of abuse often struggle to leave dangerous situations. The online strangers who told me I was in danger quite literally saved my life. Without their validation and encouragement, I might have continued trying to manage Marcus's jealousy and threats instead of recognizing them as signs of escalating abuse. I want other people in similar situations to know that you don't have to wait until someone actually hurts you to leave. Threats of violence, extreme jealousy, isolation from friends and family, and constant monitoring of your communications are all forms of abuse that can escalate to physical violence. Trust your instincts. If you feel afraid of your partner's reaction to normal, innocent behavior, that fear is telling you something important. If you find yourself changing your behavior to avoid triggering their anger or suspicion, you're already being controlled. And if someone explicitly threatens to kill you, believe them. Don't wait to see if they're serious. Don't try to manage their emotions or prove your innocence. Get help and get out safely. I lost most of my possessions, had to start over in a new city, and will probably never feel completely safe again. But I'm alive, I'm free, and I'm slowly learning to trust my own judgment again. That's worth more than anything I left behind.